I like to think of the Santa Rita Mountains as the ground beneath my heart.
Just this Rosemont project alone would destroy the top half of the Santa Ritas, would make it an environmentally dead zone. They clear out everything before they start. It would be an ugly mess, a moonscape. And then if they have to go up on the top of the mountain and go over for more copper, that mountain range would be gone.
In arid regions, the remnants of mining, once a town becomes a ghost town and there's a big hole in the ground or lots of cleared areas, is something that takes a very long time to recover from.
We have to get copper where copper is, and it's not always in the place that we want to go excavating for it.
The deposits that the Spanish were mining were what would now be considered extremely high grade. In fact, they were so high grade that they've all been mined out. The deposits that are left to us are much lower grade, typically are less than 1% copper on average. Rosemont's a little bit higher. That's actually the root of the switch from a sort of underground mine, what you might think of as the traditional mine, to the open pit.
The problem with mining at very low concentrations is that you need a lot of rock to make the operation profitable.
Copper can be in pyrite veins associated with iron sulfides. It can also be in carbonates, but it's not uniformly distributed throughout the subsurface rock material. And therefore, what mines do is they blast, and then they take the rock material, and rock that has copper that can be economically extracted, they recover, and it goes through a process for extraction.
So in an open pit mine, you can't just put a shaft down, get immediately to the deposit and start mining it. You have to remove everything else on top, and you basically start creating a cone-shaped hole in the ground, and eventually the bottom of the cone will get to where the deposit is.
It's going to be a mile across, 1 mile wide, 1 mile long, and about 3,000 feet deep. When the ore is crushed down to particles that are like talcum powder, and then the flotation process is done, and all the minerals are extracted, the tailings are stacked up and exposed to the weather, and the tailings tend to leach and pollute the groundwater. And these guys want to use the majority of this land for a dump for their tailings. And then we'll have to suffer with it for generations. These tailings piles will go anywhere from 500 to 800 feet tall. They want to go down about 500 to 600 feet below the water level, the water table. So it's going to create a huge sink, which is going to reverse the direction of all the seeps and springs that are coming out of the east side of that mountain.
I can't imagine that a hole that size wouldn't have a significant effect on the local watershed.
We're told that it's going to starve Cienega Creek of about 20 to 30% of its water supply. So we have that problem with Cienega Creek becoming very arid, disappearance of all the cottonwood trees, disappearance of a lot of the wildlife over there because it's turned into a really arid desert area rather than being the oasis that it is.
I hike up there quite a bit, often see deer. Once in a while I'll see quadrumani, javelina, rabbits, of course, squirrels. We have a jaguar that comes and goes up there in the Rosemont Valley, which is a fantastic creature. Something that a sight of one of those is the sort of thing that can change a person's life.
as the crow flies from my house to where the proposed pit would be is 6 miles. So our whole community here is definitely against this mine. They've been told what the ramifications of it would be. We're all on our own water systems. We all have our own wells. We are afraid of losing all our water. If you don't have any water, your investment's gone.
Over the course of a lifetime, every American will use about 1,400 pounds of copper. That includes everything that we have, from our things in our home to the things we wear, our cars, all of our equipment that requires copper. And that's a big number, and it's not going to be significantly reduced without recognizing that new mines are going to be necessary, but also recognizing that we need to do a better job of recycling some of the products that we create.
The problems with recycling are that demand is increasing. Two reasons for the increased demand are: one, population growth; two, increasing industrialization in places like Africa and Asia. So one alternative would simply be to eliminate the demand increase. That, if you ask me, is extremely unrealistic. I also like to point out something that arose from my experience when I was doing my PhD. I was at the Tenke-Fungurume mining camp, which is in the southeastern DR Congo. During just about my first week in the field, they had to stop excavation with a bulldozer on one of the sites because it had turned up a dead body. They had been mining copper in artisanal style. They dug underneath a hill and it collapsed on them. And that's fairly typical of artisanal mining worldwide. They don't have necessarily the equipment or the expertise to take proper safety measures, and as a result, a large number of people get killed. The advantage of having open pit type mining, or any mining in the US or other developed nations, is that that doesn't happen. And I think once that moral calculus is pointed out, it becomes a very different question.
I'm not opposed to all mining, but I am opposed to this mine. It's being proposed in absolutely the wrong place, and the damage it causes will be with us for decades and generations.
What we are working on is trying to revegetate those waste rock piles and revegetate those mine tailings piles. And how can that be done as cost effectively as possible with the optimum efficiency? We go after native species that, native species in the desert are pretty well adapted to harsh conditions. So what you need to find is which of those species do well. We also do target species that are not metal accumulators, just in case there are residual metals in the tailings. And that's very important because you want to stabilize that waste material where it is, and you don't want to move it up into the food chain. So plant species that we work with are mesquite, palo verde, creosote does well, brittlebush, which is a species that you see in the Catalina Mountains.
Now, if you hike up in the Santa Ritas, stretch out there on the pine needles and you can look up, you can see the planet Venus right in the middle of the day because you've got the altitude there, because the air is so clear. Everything fits in that ecosystem up there, and we human beings are part of that system. We're part of that nature. And open pit mining is like taking a crystal and smashing it on a piece of cement to that system that's so beautiful.
I have not heard of a mine removing its pit. They end up putting a big fence around it, and that's the end. So that is a permanent scar on the land.
Where we need to think about is how to environmentally do something about the big hole.
All of southern Arizona is going to lose its tourism, it's going to lose its health base, it's going to lose all of the reasons that people come here, whether they come here to ranch or whether they come here to watch birds and to hunt deer or to mountain bike or to just have a hike somewhere where nobody is going to be blowing something up. So it seems to me like this is the wrong place for the mine, the wrong time. And that's why I'm involved in this. That's what upsets me.
This is not over and will not be over until we stop the Rosemont mine from opening.
The reality is we need all of these materials, and hopefully the companies will follow an environmentally sound way of doing it. But if I had my choice, it wouldn't be the first spot I would pick for a mine.
This fight is not over. Far from it. All of us here today will bring accountability to this process and demand a decision that reflects the will of the people of Southern Arizona, not the wishes of Hud Bay Mining Corporation.
Gracias, amigos. Though you've been so very kind, well, thanks, but no thanks. We'll get along fine. Adios, Rosemont Copper. We won't